Hi and welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Simon and this is the start of a new reader's journal / reading vlog, and like the previous two reading vlogs, this is going to be me reading more of the Women's Prize for Fiction long list, and actually the final set of books of the Women's Prize for Fiction long list 2024. I'm not at home, I'm in London in one of my new favourite hotels. Love it here. It's not ad, it's not sponsored, I'm not saying what it is, but I'll leave it down below if you're interested. I have packed 3 of the Women's Prize books with me, and each one of these I have more than one copy of, so I don't mind carting them about. And the 3 are The Wren by Anne Enright, A Trace of Sun by Pam Williams, and Enter Ghost by Isabella Hamad. And I'm really keen to read all 3 of those, obviously, because I'm keen to read the whole of the long list, but I can't quite decide which one to pick. So what I'm going to do is I am going to try a chapter or a paragraph, no, chapter of each one of them when I get back from the gig that I'm doing tonight with the wonderful Stacey Hall's all about her book, The Household. This is the proof copy. I'm going to pick up a nice finished copy for me later and one for one of my lovely friends I'm seeing tomorrow. But yeah, when I get back from that gig at Waterstones Piccadilly, I'm so chuffed to be doing an event in London again, it's lovely. I will read a chapter of each of these and decide which one I'm going to head to and report back then. So that's that. This is the start of the vlog. I hope you're going to enjoy it. Thank you for your lovely comments on the ones that have gone up so far. And yeah, I will catch up with you later, but I'll take you with me now. Morning everyone, it is now Saturday and I had the loveliest time with Stacey Halls last night doing the event about The Household. Here is the stunning finished copy, but also just getting to catch up with Stacey because we haven't seen each other for ages. And I don't think I mentioned this yesterday, but Stacey used to be my commissioning editor when I worked on a literary magazine back before I think she'd even started trying to write The Familiars or anything, so we've known each other for years. It's been so lovely to see, like, the amazing success she's had because she's fab. But yeah, this is, I think, my favourite of all of her books, and yeah, it was just really ace to talk to her about last night. It was also lovely to see one of my patrons, Jane, again. That was fab. Also to meet the lovely Jane Peacock, and indeed to meet the lovely Harriet. I also met a few other people, but they didn't tell me their names and I meant to ask them, but it was a bit of a whirlwind, so apologies. Also had the weirdest thing on the way there. On the tube, I sat down and turned around and I was sat next to my auntie Tina, who is my, well, was, because sadly he died, but my mum's first husband's sister. And it was just so random, and she was there with her husband and my cousin Eleanor, and we only had like 4 tube stops to catch up. That was really, really lovely. Also, another thing just to mention very briefly, the crowdfunder was launched yesterday that I'm part of the team on at Libraries Connected, which is the charity I work for, and we are trying to raise £10,000 to buy a decommissioned mobile library, renovate it, and then drive it across Europe to the Ukrainian border, stacked with Ukrainian books, as over 600 libraries in Ukraine have been destroyed in the war so far. So yeah, if you want to go check that out, do feel free. So last night I said that I was going to try a chapter of 3 of the Women's Prize long list of books that I have packed. And I did start that, and I decided to do it in alphabetical order, so picked up Anne Enright's The Wren, and the first chapter is actually about 48 or so pages, and I read it all, and I'm going to carry on because I'm really, really enjoying this one. Now, I feel a bit bad because I wanted to do, well, with all of my vlogs, I've been wanting to do a case of like chatting to you about my expectations before I pick up a book and any like preconceived ideas I had or any experiences with the authors. So I'm going to do that now anyway because I did only start it this very morning. I didn't start anything last night. Me and Anne Enright have a tricky relationship. I read the actress for BBC Radio 4's A Good Read when I was delightfully asked to be on that. It's one of my favourite radio shows. It was like a real thrill. And I thought as always, some of the writing was really, as always, I've only read 2 of the books, but I thought some of the writing was really fantastic, but overall I just wasn't that versed. Before that, I'd read The Green Road, which there's a segment of that book set in New York in the 1980s that I think is some of the best writing I have ever read. But again, I found that sometimes a bit overwritten and also a bit overdramatic towards the end. This, I am loving. It's vignette-y. It is giving me slight Ali Smith vibes because there's a play with words, because there's poetry within the text, and then there's just, on top of the poetry, like I was saying, a play on words. I didn't want you to think that I think poetry is just a play on words. I remember thinking, let's all move on. I am finding the relationship that Nell has found herself in with this really horrible man, well, it's such a toxic relationship, but the way that Anne Enright is writing about it, I think, is fantastic. The vignettes really help because they're these short, sharp, condensed moments. Sometimes they can just be a sentence that's got nothing to do with anything that's going on, but it's how Nell is thinking and feeling and dealing with things, and I think it's ace. We've now switched to her mother's narrative, which I haven't started yet, but I'm going to head to shortly while I have probably coffee and a bun. And I'm really looking forward to finding out what Carmel has to say. And it's interesting to see how their relationship is from Nell's perspective. And I think we're going to see it from Carmel's. So yeah, I'm really, really, really enjoying this, and going to just carry on. Instead of trying the other 2, I will try them once I finish this and see how it goes. And my arm is about to drop off. So I'm going to go get a coffee and a bun, as I mentioned, and then I'm off to go and see the exhibition at Somerset House called Cute with 2 of my cutie best friends. I'm very excited, Polly and Michelle. I think you've seen both of them at different points on the channel if you've been here a while. Michelle and I did I think it's one of the funniest videos I've done going around a National Trust property. If I can find that video, I'll link it down below. And Polly came on the channel when she was very pregnant with her son, gosh, 6 years ago, and has recently had a baby. So I'm very excited to see those 2 cuties too. So yeah, I'll take you on to all of that, and I'll catch up with you later when maybe I've got more to say about this. That's me, the gay one.
That's me actually, it's the one that's wedged. I'm wedged in that weird balloon thing with the muffin top. That's me. Yeah, sweet, aren't they?
It's Pussy Power.
Pussy power. Yum, 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 yum.
Morning everyone, it is Sunday. I had a fabulous time yesterday with my friends Polly and Michelle. I've known Polly since I was 4, and I've known Michelle since I think I was 24. So both of them, quite some time, almost 40 years in one case and almost 20 years in the other. And it was lovely because I hadn't met Polly's daughter before, so I got some cuddles with her, which was lovely. And we went and saw Cute, which the first floor was really cute, and then after that I felt it just got really, really weird. Anyway, I did that, went and had an absolutely epic feast at Oaxaca, and then came back here and sort of just crashed, really. I did that annoying thing. This is so minor and so pathetic to tell you about, but it just shows you how irritated I can get with myself. I did that annoying thing where I fell asleep watching YouTube and woke up 5 hours later. So it's telling me that I've already spent over 7 hours on the internet today and on my phone. So there we are. Anyway, went and had a Jejune breakfast this morning, went and had a swim, and I'm not quite halfway, so it feels a little bit naughty to be updating you before I am, because that's generally the routine I'm trying to follow with this. But I am almost halfway, maybe a third of the way through. I'm at the end of the first part of Camel's narrative and going back to Nell, and I thought I'd have a catch up with you before I head back there and say a few things that I forgot to yesterday. One, that I'm looking forward to going back to Nell's narrative because it did remind me a bit of Sheena Patel's I'm a Fan. There's this really kind of obsessive, odd behaviour as well as her being treated like absolute dirt by this man. Also, the other thing that I've got to mention is this has some Sally Rooney vibes, both with Nell in terms of there being lots of miscommunication, but actually also with Carmel, because as we go through like her teenage years into her 20s, there's a lot of miscommunication, a lot of friendships that go awry, and a lot of going off to Italy and Europe, which, I mean, I do that. I go to Europe quite a bit. However, I just find it really, really stereotypical and seems to happen so many times, particularly I've noticed in Irish novels. People miscommunicate, things go wrong, oh, they'll go off to Italy and try and see if it can sort itself out, and it doesn't, it invariably gets worse and they come home a bit more miserable. But Carmel's narrative is much more about her father, who is this famous poet, and the relationship that she had, well, very difficult relationship that she had with her sister, her mother becoming very, very ill, and the way Anne Enright writes about that is really beautiful. Her narrative is less vignette-y, but it still has a real pace to it, and I have been really lost in some of the writing, and some of the phrases Anne Enright uses are just so lovely. And then she'll say things that like will have a real poignance, but also a real everyday normalcy about them, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it way more than I expected to, because I have, as I've said, had a bit of a bumpy relationship with Anne Enright's writing before. I'm going to be carrying on reading this as I, before I go off to meet the lovely Jen from Bookmark on the Wall. We're going to go and have dim sum, but before that, I'm going to pop to Battersea Bookshop, which is a bookshop I love aesthetically, but also can find it feels a little bit sterile, and also their mix of books is a little bit odd. I feel like it wants to be like Bookhouse in Bristol, but hasn't quite got there yet. I'm gonna head there, then probably go and grab a coffee, and then go and head and meet Jen for dim sum, and maybe we'll go to Foyles afterwards. Maybe. Also need to check out this hotel and move into another hotel later, which is one that's been booked by my work, so it's not quite as fancy this one because I work for a charity. I'm gonna go now because Miles going dead. Bye. Morning everyone, it is Monday and I had a lovely day yesterday. After we last spoke, I went and potted round Battersea Power Station, went to the bookshop, bought a book, which is in my case, so I can't get that for you right now, but I'll show you when I get home later tonight, or whenever we have a catch up when I'm at home, because it could be tomorrow morning, who can say. Anyway, moving on, and I'm so annoyed with myself because I didn't get any footage of it at all. I had the most wonderful afternoon with Jen of Bookmark on the Wall over on Instagram, I'll link down below, and we had dim sum, an absolute dim sum feast, and then we went and had a potter around Foyles where we talked about lots of books, looked at lots of books, but didn't buy a single book. So there we are. On to books though. I have finished The Wren by Anne Enright, and this has been just a complete surprise to me because I really, really, really enjoyed it. I think the way it looks at mothers and daughters and mothers and fathers is really interesting. I haven't mentioned the fact there's poetry within here, which I liked. I don't know if it necessarily added masses. I thought some of it was beautiful about nature. Birds are a really big theme in this book. Well, you might have guessed that from the title possibly. But I love just hearing Nell and Carmel's story and the complexities of their relationship and the complexities of the relationships around them, the good, the bad, and the in-between. And I think the way that Anne Enright writes certain sentences in this are just stunning. Oh, I also like the way that she looks at what we inherit and what we don't from different people and what might possibly skip a generation too. I really, really enjoyed that, and creativity and how that has changed. You know, we go from poets to people writing blog posts to the fact that almost text messages can be poetry in some ways. There's a sort of leaning towards that towards the end. So going on the 3 elements of criteria for the Women's Prize, was this excellent, absolutely. I thought the writing was superb. Was it accessible? Yes, after the first weird bit about the psychologist, which I think could have been actually chopped off and then you could have just got into the story after that, really. It didn't seem to make sense to the whole rest of the context for me. But yeah, other than that, really, really accessible, even though definitely experimental, and like I said, reminded me of Alice Smith and her love of playing with words in some ways, particularly with Nell's narrative, which I think I did prefer out of the two, although I loved Carmel's story. The vignette style, which I mentioned, reminded me a bit of Sheena Patel's I'm a Fan, but also because of the subject matter with Nell, loved that too. And there are sort of Sally Rooney vibes, both in the way miscommunication is looked at, which is sometimes I hate in fiction, but actually I thought this was done really well. I think Sally Rooney does it really, really well too, if a little bit samey every time. Originality, I think so, even though mother and father and mother and daughter complex relationships are quite prolific in fiction, I still thought this had its own take on that, and they do say there's nothing new under the sun, so actually originality is really, really tough. Anyway, yeah, enjoyed it a lot. I am now going to head for breakfast and start Enter Ghost with a baked good of some kind, and then head to work. As very excitingly, I am getting an assistant at work 2 days a week. I'm only in 3.5 days a week. It's their first day today, so that's very exciting. I won't film any of that because that might be a little bit weird on their first day. In terms of expectations of this though, going back to books, I don't really have masses other than I know it's a very timely book for what's going on over in Palestine and Israel and now Iran with what's going on in the news. And I think it also looks at Shakespeare. So I'm intrigued by this. I've heard very mixed things. Some people think it's absolutely amazing. Some people think it's really hard to get into. I haven't read the author before, although my friend Polly, who I saw on Saturday, had The Parisian in her bag and was saying that she was enjoying it very much. So yeah, really intrigued with this. I'm going to get started with it once I head and get a baked good before I get on the tube. I will catch up with you when I have read more of it. Probably more than 50 pages because I don't think I'm going to be able to catch up when I'm at work. But yeah, we'll catch up when we catch up. Oh dear. You think that's boring, Millie? It's not a good sign. Hi everyone, it's now Tuesday lunchtime and I thought I'd have a catch up with you. I'm back at work, hence back in here. I thought I'd have a catch up with you about how I'm getting on with Enter Ghost, but before that I realised I didn't actually get around sharing my book from, oh that was clumsily done, my book from Battersea Bookshop and what I purchased. And the book was, actually I've got two things because I'm on a bit of a bookmark, bookmark buying phase. And whilst this isn't technically a bookmark, it's a wooden postcard, I thought that would make quite a good bookmark potentially. Maybe. Yeah, I've got that. And also picked up Fragile Animals by Genevieve Jagger. And I have seen Jen talk about this, I think in one of her most anticipated videos, and that really, really intrigued me. I think it's about vampires. Yes, when an ex-Catholic woman develops a sexual relationship with a vampire, she's forced to confront the memories that haunt her religious past. That sounded intriguing to me, so I picked it up. And then when I read the author bio, I was like mildly obsessed. Genevieve Jagger is a queer writer and witch from Scotland. That's all I needed to know. I'm in. So yeah, pick that up. So I'll be reading that at some point once all the Women's Prize longlist reading is over, although I've got a couple of other prizey projects I really want to get to too. What can I say? I'm a glutton for prizes, possibly a glutton for punishment. Back to the Women's Prize for Fiction longlist. I am about 100 and something pages into Enter Ghost. I read quite a lot of it on the train yesterday and I read some more this morning before I got up to go to work. That said, it's not one of those books I feel like you can dip in and out of, so I'm hoping to have a good old crack of reading it a little bit later. Maybe I'll get 30 minutes or so this lunchtime. I'm a big fan of, if I can, a good 40 minutes to 2 hours of reading. I really like sitting and really getting into a book. And this, I feel, does require that a little bit, but also it's quite dense, so you sort of need breaks from it. So yeah, anyway, we'll come to that in a little bit. What's it about? This is all about Sonia, who goes back to Israel and Palestine, well, Israel initially, to see her sister, who she hasn't seen for quite a while. And there's a really interesting tension between the two of them. But while she's there, her sister introduces her to her friend Mariam, who is putting on a performance of Hamlet, obsessed with Hamlet, in the West Bank. And as Sonia is an actor and Mariam is missing a Gertrude, she's asked her to step in for a bit, and in doing so, it means that Sonia's looking back at her past. And also there's various different tensions in the book that are really interesting. I feel like I'm going all sorts of different directions with this one, but that's sort of what the book does itself, because you have the information about her arriving in Israel and being strip searched, and then wanting to go and see some beauty before she goes to see her sister. And at the same time, we're going backwards in time as she's telling us about her time becoming an actor, an affair that she's had recently. And so you've got these two storylines going along. And then what also is quite fascinatingly done is that Isabella Hamad turns the prose into script form. So I'll give you an example. There you go. You can see here, you've got the script down the side, and that's intriguing me. I can't decide right now if I like it or not. I sort of do, I sort of don't. One thing I was worried about was that I don't really know the play Hamlet that well, and there is a brilliant condensed, I don't want to use the term info dump, but it is kind of an info dump of what it is about. So if you're worried about that, that gets explained quite early. And there is some really interesting dialogue, because it's in the scripty bits, around Shakespeare and the play, which I kind of liked, and sort of contextualising it. But also there's a really interesting about it being translated. So yeah, that's where I'm at so far. I'm intrigued by it. Yeah, it's definitely giving me lots of information around Israel and Palestine. And I've been to Israel. I went about 15, 16, maybe longer years ago. And I didn't realise there had been an intifada, I think I've said that right, in the early 2000s. There's a lot around 1948, which I'm finding really educational, but that makes it sound like it's really academic and it's sort of doing that, and it's not. But I'm definitely getting a lot of information that I didn't know and getting more of a perspective. And I do feel like Isabella Hamad is definitely not moralising, but just sort of pointing out what happened. And I think that's really definitely done. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. I'll probably have a catch up with you about it once I've finished it, because I've got a really, really bonkers busy day today, and then I'm going to read that for a few hours and then probably just watch some Heartbreak High for a little bit of light relief, because there are some sort of comic moments, but mainly it is quite a heavy book. So yeah, I need that light relief. Anyway, I'll catch up with you anon, and yeah, that's all I've got to report. I feel like sometimes with these segments, I overtalk for the sake of overtalking. And I know I like tangents anyway, but sometimes it is just overtalking. And I don't want to do that, so I'm going to stop overtalking now and go. That is beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
That's just gorgeous.
It's heavenly.
Push me, and then just hurt me, till I get my satisfaction.
The vending machine had Fanta.
She'll be right.
Look at that morning light, Mildred. It's the Bin Man biscuit. You really don't like them, do you? Biscuit is just the Bin Man. Hi everyone, it is Wednesday afternoon. I am doing a quick switch between jobs. I've been at work all day and I'm shortly going to head to Manchester, as I'm going to be in conversation with the wonderful Sinead Gleeson about Haxton at Blackwell's, and I'm really looking forward to it. If you like books set on islands, if you like witchy stuff, if you like cults, if you like salacious shenanigans and more, then I would highly, highly recommend this. I will be talking about it in my February, March, April wrap up whenever that arrives at some point in May. So yeah, but I've really enjoyed this. I've known Sinead for, I think, about 17 years, since I started, well, back in the days of blogging. She's already written a memoir called Constellations, which if you've not read, I highly recommend. So yeah, off to go and do that shortly. Now, I'm also going to have a catch up with you quickly about Enter Ghost by Isabella Hammond. I do actually prefer the hardback edition. They threw that on my face then. So, Enter Ghost. This is where I do feel frustrated with the medium that is YouTube, particularly with doing reading blogs, where really a catch up on any book is maybe, unless it's a video dedicated solely to a book, a catch up over a book is maybe like 2 or 3 minutes. And I don't think you can do this book justice in 2 or 3 minutes. I think it's an incredible book. I think it's a very intelligent book. I think it is a very heavy book. And I think it can be occasionally quite a, this sounds awful, but dry book. And I think though, that said, I think all of that is necessary for the subject matter and the way that it looks at the relationship, doesn't seem to be the right word, I guess the history between Israel and Palestine, and what happened in 1948 and the 48ers, and then what happened in the early thousands with the second Intifada. I really hope I've said that right. And then what's obviously going on now, although this book is set before that, and the tensions it looks at, and the different communities and the different points of view and the complexities of all of those things is quite phenomenal in what is in some ways quite a slight book, because all of the script stuff that I talked about basically sometimes means that you're reading everything much faster. And I did wonder if that was kind of a design to break it up a little bit, because it is, as I said, a heavy book. What I think this book has done is enlighten me much more to the history, and I think it's a very necessary book for lots and lots of people to read. I often find myself doing a bit of when I say it's a necessary book, but this is one such book. And sometimes it's quite hard to distinguish between the necessity of what Isabella Hammond is telling us and the fact that we need to know more if maybe we don't, and actually the book as a book. And that's quite a complicated thing. And because in some ways I thought this book was incredible, and as I said, really intelligent, quite heavy. I didn't always enjoy it, but I think that's not the point. It is a book that makes you feel uncomfortable. It is a book that gets you sort of asking lots of questions, and certainly is one of those books that is almost like a jumping off point. It looks at lots of different things, as well as the tensions and the history between Israel and Palestine. It looks at fame in a really interesting way. It looks at acting, it looks at art. The way it looks at Shakespeare is really well done. I felt sometimes the script thing made me feel a bit distanced from everything, rather than like I was really with the characters. But then Isabella Hammond would sort of balance that out with, after a bit of the script sections, you then get much more into the minds of what's going on. I thought Marianne was a fascinating character. I thought the tensions in the relationship between Sonia and her sister was done really well. The erasure of kind of some of her family history and their culture, I thought, was brilliantly portrayed. So there's a lot of stuff I really like in here. I think this book needs to settle with me more. I just need to give it a bit more thought, I think. I felt similarly after I read In Defence of the Act, because when books are dealing with such big subject matter, like I said, it just doesn't feel enough to talk about them in like 3 or 4 minutes. This book needs more time and discussion. I'm not going to do a video on it on its own, because I think that would be unfair to do. Like, I then feel like I had to do them for all the 16 books on the long list. I'm not going to do that. If this is shortlisted, which I think it probably will be, maybe I'll talk about it in more detail at some point. But this to me feels like the perfect sort of book I would love to do as a book club, so that I can hear lots of other different people's opinions on it too. And if you've read it and you've got them, let's have a chat about it in the comments down below. Try not to put any spoilers in your first comment. Once it goes down into like chatty back and forth afterwards, I think it's fine, but I don't want anyone accidentally seeing anything before they read it. But I did think this was a very powerful book. That was how I left it, thinking, wow, what a powerful read. I need to think about it more. There we go. I'm going to leave it as that. I need to think about it more. Now, I'm hoping this next book is something quite different. And this is the book I'm taking with me to read on the train to and from. In fact, actually, I won't read anything on the train to the event because I'll go back into going through my proof of Hagston and sort of looking at different subjects and themes and things that I want to talk about. On the train back from Manchester, I will start A Trace of Sun by Pam Williams. Now, I feel a bit mean about this book because I've been a bit harsh on it because of the cover, not just in terms of what it looks like, although Lena made me almost wet myself when she described it as a really shit postcard cover, but also it feels a bit funny. It's kind of, I don't know, yeah, it's got something about it, I'm not quite sure. And I have had problems with this publisher in the past where there's been some spelling mistakes, some of the typeset has been a bit, and that isn't the author's fault, but I do think if you're submitting a book to a prize, there's got to be a certain level of quality across the board, not just the writing, but also, I don't know, maybe that's just me. Let me know if you vehemently disagree with me in the comments down below. But I don't know much about this, other than it is set in the Caribbean, I think. And I think it's about a mother and son's relationship, which always intrigues me. And I love Caribbean literature as a general rule. So I'm intrigued for it, but a little bit, I would say, nervous for it too. So anyway, I'm going to go. I will see you all when I have more thoughts on this, but I'll try and get some snapshots for the event, although I don't have my trusty cameraman, Chris, with me on this one. But yeah, speak to you when I speak to you.
But I was sort of along those lines. This pieces
Oh, another room is discovered. Another place to hide. Oh, there we go. Hello. Hello. Hi. Come on, Millie. Hello. You're going to get your hair cut today, aren't you? Hey? You're excited? You don't like it, do you? But you've got so knotty and tangly because you're a little mini Maine Coon.
I love me a good old pampering. Do you think you can handle it now? It's good to be a good inside. You're so welcome.
Good boy, Oscar. Good boy, Biscuit. Is it nice to have those knots gone away? Oh, good girl. Oh. I can no longer bathe in peace. Good boy, Biscuit. Hi everyone, it is now Sunday evening and I'm actually going to be editing this last little bit now as soon as I filmed it to put it up on the channel. It's been a while. I last spoke to you on Wednesday, although you've had quite a lot of cat content in between then and now, and I hope you enjoyed it very much. Things went a little bit off kilter over the last few days, I won't lie. Thursday was bonkers in terms of I had half a day at work, or it was meant to be just half a day at work, but it ended up being quite a bit longer than that because a few things were going on. And then I spent hours editing the last Women's Prize long list reading vlog / readers journal. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't, I'll link that one and the first one down below so you can go and have a gander. But yeah, I had a really bonkers busy day. I was editing that until really late, then put it up quite late, which made me a bit cranky because I know about the algorithm and I shouldn't think about the algorithm, but I can't help think about the algorithm sometimes because whilst this isn't work, it is kind of work, like sometimes quite hard work, and editing is one of those things. Anyway, then on Friday and yesterday, I was pretty much bedridden. I had a big Derkham's flare, and for those of you who don't know, I have a chronic illness called Derkham's, and it basically can create like a body migraine. Now, it wasn't as, I want to say dilapidating, I don't think that's the right word, but it wasn't as like bad as they can be, and I was able to read. So I have some reading like a reading dump, I guess, to add now. So let's go back to Wednesday, and I said that I was going to start A Trace of Sun. I don't know what's going on with the lighting, it's the time of day, I guess, by Pam Williams, and I did. And I got to the end of part 1, beginning of part 2. I should have just said that. I got to the beginning of part 2, and I decided that this was a DNF for now, not forever, but for now. I think it's a good book. I think it could probably do with a bit of an edit. I felt that as we followed Scylla and the relationship with Rafe, who she leaves behind in Granada and then eventually brings over to the UK, and the relationship between his father and him, and her and his father, and him and his siblings, there was something occasionally a little bit overly cyclical about it. And I was getting, and this is a compliment, Andrea Levy vibes occasionally, but I think sometimes it also felt a bit slow and, like I said, a bit repetitive, and I don't know if I felt like I was getting anything 100% new. So I thought, instead of carrying on and possibly not doing the book itself any favours, that this is a DNF for now, not forever, and I will carry on with it at some point, be it if it's on the shortlist or be it just sometime in the next few months, because I would like to finish it. I just was aware that I had a limited amount of time to read all of the books. Now, on that note, I know that, well, certainly not by the end of this vlog, but hopefully by, well, Tuesday, when I want to film my shortlist predictions, I will have finished all the books. As it stands now, I still have 1 9/10 of another to go, probably a bit more than that. But there are 2 that I have finished and managed to finish when I was bedbound or in the bath. And those are And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott, which I thought was really, really good. I did have a few wobbles with this one as well. It's about a woman called Alice who, when we first meet her, she is getting ready to, well, she's met a boy she really likes, and she wants to kind of, what's the word, lose her virginity to him. And there's various things that happen before that, but that's what the beginning of the book is about in the prologue. And she's babysitting, and he's going to come round, and Pocahontas is on in the background, the Disney Pocahontas, which I've still never seen. And Pocahontas starts to talk to her and tell her, one, the real story of her story, as in Pocahontas's, but also that she really shouldn't do what she wants to do with this boy because it'll be really bad of her. And then we go forward, well, about a decade or 2 to when Alice has had her daughter. She's also recently been bereaved and lost her mother, and we follow her as things start to get a bit weird again. They have been weird on and off since Pocahontas spoke to her through the screen. Like, trees sometimes talk to her, and suburban houses seem to have quite a lot to say, and even cockroaches at one point. And this is in part a book about postpartum psychosis. It's also very much about what it's like to be an Indigenous person in Canada who marries a white man and kind of is expected to settle into that life. But also, Alice is writing the history of the origin story of her people, like the creation story, and the way that she's looking at that I thought was really interesting, because it's about like what you tell and also thinking about what your audience is going to get from it. And so you've got all of that going on, as well as this being a book that's kind of a horror, that is, well, I say kind of horror, some bits are really freaky. It's also got one of the most bonkers brilliant endings that I won't spoil for any of you at all. And if any of you have read this, leave a comment below, but don't say about the ending in the first bit. Let me respond and then respond back, because that way people won't see it and nothing will be given away. Whereas sometimes if you do it in the first comment, people say, blah, 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 moving on. So yeah, I thought this was really refreshing. I've been wanting to read a lot more Canadian fiction, and this certainly was a great piece of Canadian fiction. I really want to read Alicia Elliott's memoir as well, which I think has some similar themes within it. And yeah, I thought this was pretty brilliant. A bit bonkers, which was also just what I needed because I was feeling a bit rubbish. And so yeah, enjoyed this one a lot. The next one that I read was 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster, and I actually only finished that this very morning. And another book that I really enjoyed. It starts off in an old people's home where a woman is going around and she's trying to find out like the 3 words they would use to describe their life. And she works on obituaries, and she ends up talking to this one woman and she's like, I can't give you 3, I can probably give you 8. And each one of those words is one part of her life. And then we go through those different lives that she's had. What I loved about this particularly was the fact that it's kind of a patchwork book, and I really love those kind of books. So when I say a patchwork book, what I mean is that it doesn't go in chronological order, and actually you start with the 5th life, then you go to I think it's the 2nd life, and then you bounce around a bit. It does go a bit more chronological at the end, which I thought was an interesting decision, and I think could have maybe been juggled around a bit more. But I really, the places that you go to in this book and the insight into Korea particularly, I just found devastating, sometimes really hard to read, but also grimly fascinating, if I'm honest, and very much like one of those books where you're just like, wow, that's so much, there's so much that I just didn't know, and I want to find out more. And yeah, I think that, sorry, I should have said it's written by Miran Lee. I think she is a fantastic writer. This is her debut, and I cannot wait to see what she writes next. I just loved it, even though some of it was so difficult to read. I think, yeah, she's quite phenomenal. I think you can tell that this might be one of my top 6. Anyway, moving on. That's not until Tuesday. I shouldn't be giving teasers away. But yeah, I just thought this was brilliant. So much so that today, after finishing that, I have actually left the house for the first time in, since Wednesday, and have been to have dim sum. And have also been and done a little bit of shopping. Including getting some Lush bath bombs that have been brought back, and I'm so excited for those. I don't have them with me, otherwise I'd show you them, but they'll be in another vlog at some point. Anyway, I also went to Waterstones and picked up this edition of 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster because I just love this cover so much. I know, I've already got a copy. I should be stopped, but I couldn't be stopped and wouldn't be stopped. And it's not the only one that I picked up today from the long list that I already have. So those are the 3 books to catch up with you on. Another DNF, sadly, but a DNF for now, not forever. And then 2 that I completed, and they were perfect books actually, both in terms of escapism, having lots to think about, but also just being, yeah, fantastically written, I thought. That now means I still have 2 books left, and the next one I'm going to head to is Soldier Soldier by Claire Kilroy. Now I have read the first 5, 6, 7 pages of this, and I'm going to be honest, I found it pretty saccharine. So I'm intrigued to see how it goes because I've heard so many people raving about this book. Also, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this compares to some of the other books about motherhood that I have read. I mean, you have this one for starters, and actually this one to a degree, but that's a very different kind of, I don't know, this feels like it might be a bit more cloying and a bit close quarters, and also the child is a lot younger. But I'm also thinking of the Wren, and the other ones that I thought about, Ordinary Human Failings to a degree. So yeah, I think motherhood's obviously a really big subject in this year's long list, and that's no bad thing. But yeah, I've started reading this, I was like, okay, we get it. You really love your baby, and you know, good, but also where else are we going? So we'll see where we go with this one. I'm going to read that tonight. Then I'm going to have a little bit of a break because I need to read this, not on the Women's Prize long list at all, because Andreas is a man, and this is the gentleman from Peru, and I'm doing an event with him. And I will say, I feel like I had a bit of a blip where I thought I'd been a complete failure with this because I really wanted to get all of the books done cover to cover by the end of today, really. And I haven't, and partly that's because some of the books are not books that I have wanted to read the whole of, but I would like to go back at some point, and sometimes it's been because of time constraints, which isn't really fair on the books or the authors, or me actually as a reader. I obviously love the Women's Prize and I love reading the long list. I think in hindsight I should have given myself longer, but then because I've had so much reading to do for work, and because my job has changed quite a bit in the last few weeks particularly, and there's been a lot more travel, it has made me think, oh, can I still do this anymore? And I really want to read the Women's Prize for Fiction long list next year because it's the 30th anniversary, but I also need to think about, like, I don't know, it's 16 books, it's a lot in not a lot of time. I mean, technically it's 6 weeks, actually 7, because I got the books a week early. But like I said, just work and stuff got in the way. Anyway, that feels like I'm making excuses. I'm not feeling down about it, and I was, but I'm not, because I'm being kinder to myself in 2024. But yeah, it's given me a bit of a, oh, I need to think about things. That said, I really want to start a new reading vlog tomorrow that I'm going to film over a couple of weeks, and actually have a break of a week in the middle because I'll be away and reading other stuff. And the last book that I want to read on the Women's Prize long list is the one that I'm hearing, probably alongside Soldier Sailor, the most praise for, and that is Brotherless Night by V.B. Ganesh and Anthem. And I'm really excited for this. I saw Mercedes talking about this the other day, and that intrigued me all the more because I didn't realise about some of the subject matter within the book. This is the other book that I was a complete and utter naughty sausage today because I picked up Brotherless Night in paperback. I mean, it's also because I am going down to London on Wednesday for the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist event. And I want to start doing a Reading the Carol Shields Prize shortlist video, which this is also up for. And when I'm travelling about, I like to have a book that I can batter about a bit, and this one is a tiny little bit battered in places, and I can take the dust jacket off and take it to Hogwarts and then give it to my mum, although I actually won't need it if it's on the shortlist because I think she's being sent the shortlist books and she's abroad anyway at the moment. But anyway, yeah, so I picked up another copy of it. I think I also prefer the colourway a little bit on this one, even though purple is my favourite colour. Just in that, I think I just like the really bold sort of pinky red and the mustard. Anyway, I'm very excited for this one, and we'll be heading to that as part of the start of as the first book in that reading vlog. And I also picked up 2 more books today. The next one that I think I'm going to be reading is Eleanor Catton's Burnham Wood, which is also my Patreon book club for May. So if you want to join that, you can. This is what we're reading. We'll then be reading Hungry Ghost by Kevin Jarrett Hussein in June before July's book club, which will be us looking back at our favourite and least favourite books of the last quarter, which is always a really good time. It's become a regular thing that we're doing now. So yeah, I'll be heading to that. And again, this is one that I can pack in a bag, as I've already got the hardback and I already have a proof. However, the proof cover's not very exciting, and this one will look nice on Instagram because I've got an idea for something that a reel that I want to make with this later this week. So there we are. And then the other one that I bought is one that I was going to try and squeeze in this month, but I've really got to be kinder to myself and more realistic about what books I can get read in certain months. But this is Brother Do You Love Me by Manny Coe and Ruben Coe. And I bought this because it was one of my mum's favourite books of last year, and the savage reading prompt for April was to read a book by one of your, a favourite book by another booktuber, and I thought that would be quite a nice one. Anyway, moving along. So, we need to do a bit of a recap, don't we, in terms of what I have read this week, also what I've not. Let me just juggle everything around because I'm not going to have time to edit this. Oh, come on, Savage, what are you playing at? Just put those over there for now. Stop it, Simon, come on. Sort yourself out. That one. And then the books that I read this week. I'm not flashing you my belly. That would be dreadful time. Oh gosh, this is all going absolutely out of control. I'm throwing books on the floor. Everything's gone awry. Anyway, so let's go through the books I read and put them in order of how much I like them, just to give you a teaser. But that said, also, the other thing that I really thought about, and it was after reading Enter Ghost, was that it is quite nice to have a bit of space between reading them and letting them settle, because some will fade, some will come even more to the fore, some you'll love even more than you did before, etc. But, right, so this week, the order of preference, I'll go from least to most favourite. So this feels harsh saying this because it's not a DNF forever, like I said, it's a DNF for now. But when it came to the criteria of excellence, I thought the writing was really good. When it came to, if a bit repetitive, which would like to take a few marks off of me, originality, I do feel like I have read this story before a little bit. And that makes me feel really bad. And the whole originality thing has been something that I've questioned quite a lot, because there aren't that many totally original books that come out, really, if we're honest. So yeah, we've got that. And then in terms of accessibility, I would say yes, this is a very accessible book. So yeah, and one that I do want to finish at some point. Then we have Enter Ghost, which might be a little bit controversial, but going again about the criteria, excellence, the writing is really, really, really good. I think sometimes I wanted a bit more. I felt I wanted to get to know the characters a little bit more, and for them to have more sides to them. I think I mentioned the word dry, and that was a bit harsh. I don't quite mean dry, but yeah, I think this is an incredibly intelligent book, an incredibly emotive book, but sometimes there is this distance. That's what it is, because of the script element, which is original and really interesting and does add this distance, but also gives a different perspective. I also think sometimes that made me feel a bit, it wasn't clinical, but maybe cooler towards it, if that makes sense. So yeah, accessible, I would say pretty much, especially the fact that it helped having that info dump about Hamlet. Original, definitely. Excellent writing, yes, but with that slight distance, which sort of, I don't know, I felt like I wanted to be a little bit more involved than I sometimes was. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Then we have, and I would say actually at the moment these two would tie this week, because I loved this. I really enjoyed this. I think it's bonkers and brilliant, and it really highlights some really important, oh, I hate that term, but I think the way it looks at postpartum psychosis, also the expectations of women in general after birth, the way it looks at how we perceive ourselves, the way it looks at mental health, the way it looks at, like I said, what it's like to be Indigenous and then kind of be brought into this other world, even though it's the same world as you, but so vitally different, so totally different. I thought all of that was done phenomenally. The ending is utterly bonkers and people may feel very different ways about it. I think, again, this maybe could have been a tiny bit shorter, but that's me really, really nitpicking. And I'm trying to judge these books like I would if I was judging the prize. And I think I read quite similarly when I've judged prizes, but when you've got a certain criteria, you have to sort of bat it against it. That's what I was going to say, actually. I haven't done the criteria of this. Excellence, completely. I think the writing is brilliant in here. I think originality, definitely. I've not read anything quite like it. I haven't read much horror though. Maybe if you're a horror reader, this will feel maybe a bit basic to you, but then at the same time, I think that's great in terms of the accessibility of it as well. So that's all super duper good. And yeah, really, really, really like that one. Then we have 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster. Now this one I think will probably grow on me even more than it has, as it still settles with me, because I only finished it, like I said earlier today. But I thought in terms of accessibility, it was completely hooked by it from the start. Even though there are those patchwork elements, I think that Renee does a really good job of dropping little threads or reminders of characters, or even some foreshadowing, which I really, really enjoyed. So yeah, I would say it was accessible, excellence, yep, excellent writing, and originality. Yes, whilst I have read other patchwork books, I've not read one quite like this, and I'm still thinking about the analogy of eating soil in this book and what that means to try and find your place within the land, or to keep yourself grounded, that I've just suddenly thought of that I probably should have mentioned earlier. Anyway, never mind. Yeah, so that one. And then we have the Wren by Anne Enright, which is my favourite of the books that I have read this week, which I am certainly surprised at, as I have had, well, a bit of a bumpy ride with Anne Enright before, but I loved Nell's sections and the way there was this sort of vignette style, also the way it sort of reminded me of I'm a Fan, and also reminded me a little bit of Ali Smith and her love of playing with words and language and celebrating that. And I also thought it had certain Sally Rooney elements in a good way, even if that whole thing of, particularly in Carmel's story of, oh, you know, there's loads of miscommunication, then you go off around Europe and think you're sorting yourself out, come back and actually realise you haven't, you're a bit more miserable. I think that trope has been done. But yeah, I thought the writing was fab, so there we are. That is my thoughts. I've still got 2 to go. I'm really sorry that I didn't get around to finishing them in this vlog. There is a little bit of me that does feel a failure, but I'm trying to park that. And like I say, be kinder to myself. But I'll be chatting to you about both of these when I do my shortlist predictions video on Tuesday, and hopefully we'll have finished this one and certainly read a lot of this one. You'll also see this in the future reading blog / reader's journal when I read the Carol Shields shortlist for 2024, which I'm really, really excited for. But yeah, there we go. That's that. That's a lot of books. Let's just show these 2 gorgeous ones again, because honestly I don't know what it is about these 2 colours. I mean, that one is quite different, that one not so much, but there's something about the colours. Anyway, there we are. I'm chattering away and overthinking it because I also still do feel a little bit like a failure. It's so ridiculous. But as I said back at the beginning of the year, 1, I'm being kind to myself, and 2, I want to create content from what I'm reading, not be reading to create content. And it's a little bit different with the Women's Prize because it is a little bit of a challenge and has been for several years. And I have learned a lot about myself over the last couple of weeks in terms of what I do and don't like in reading, and maybe that's a video I can do at some point too. But yeah, I haven't managed to get to them all. That's fine. Sometimes we fail, but we learn from it. And I think next year, I'm still going to do it again next year with the long list for the 30th anniversary, but I need to try and get in a little bit earlier, maybe not have so many work events at the time, although got to pay for a roof over your head. So yeah, I think it's also a little bit, if I'm honest, where the Women's Prize is so fab to me in terms of having sent the long list for so many years and sending my mum them, that like I don't want to let them down, and I haven't, but part of me does feel a little bit like I have. But anyway, I would have read them by the time I see them all on Wednesday. I'd love to know your thoughts on any of the books that I've mentioned in this video, or any of the books that are actually on the long list, except for these 2, because they're the ones that I've not read yet, and I would like to go into them a little bit blind. So I know I've heard a few bubblings and murmurings about them, but yeah, that's fine. But the rest of the list, absolute fair game. Let's have a chat about it in the comments down below, and on Tuesday we'll be able to talk about them all because I would have read them all then. I now need to pick them all up so that I can take the thumbnail for this video, which should have gone up about 35 to, well, maybe actually an hour ago by the time I've added this, saved it, exported it even, uploaded it, etc, etc, etc. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're all doing super duper well, and I will see you in another video very, very soon. Bye.